Hello, everybody, and welcome to Page Executive's ENABL series on creating your NED brand. In this session, I'm actually joined by Ozzie Clarke-Binns, the head of people at British Airways. Ozzie, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself to our members?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. As you said, Ozzie Clarke-Binns. My background is predominantly in people, HR, and OD. Currently, I'm at British Airways. Prior to that, my background was in startups and helping them to grow and scale across the world. And outside of work, I've been a non-exec director for the past 22 years.
Wow. So a lot of our members who will be listening to this today are looking for NED positions, and many of them, it will be their first position. Feedback I've actually received from clients is that candidates are tending to struggle to actually sell themselves in the interview. So could you explain the difference between an executive versus a NED interview?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for all the interviews I conducted where I've chaired people committees and nomination committees, these are the committees that ultimately help interview and run the recruitment processes for board members before they recommend it to the actual board. One of the biggest issues people make is not getting that distinction. And often it comes down to the difference between strategy and operations. In your exec role day to day, you are the person doing the work. You're responsible for achieving those targets, making sure they happen by the actual doing of the work. As a non-exec director, because you're not there every day, you're part-time at best in many ways, you don't meet as frequently as you would in your day job. Your role really is about influencing. It's about asking the right kind of questions, making sure the right processes are in place, and making sure you have the right assurance. So when it comes to interviews, what people are looking for, what I look for, is that you can articulate how you've achieved things through other people, how you've influenced them, how you've challenged decisions, how you've sought assurance to make sure projects and things are on track. Less around what you actually delivered in those roles. And the reason being is, I want to see that you understand the distinction between NED and executive kind of work, but also that you can articulate where in your career, whether you have experience being on boards or not, you've used influencing to drive results, influencing to deliver things.
So it is more around that sort of bigger picture piece then for a lot of people, rather than I have achieved this or X, Y, Z.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the board level, you are responsible for setting the organisation strategy and making sure the strategy is delivered. Now, because you're not there all the time, the key people you interface with across the staff, but of course, that executive management committee. And it's those individuals you make sure you're asking the right kinds of questions, you're having the right influence on them, you're engaging in the right ways to know what needs to happen for the organisation and seeking assurance that it is happening. So if you can't show that in an interview, sometimes it's a little worrying to actually, if you're like saying to me, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, that sounds fantastic. But that's not the job of the NED. Your job is not to come in and do the work, it's to make sure the work is happening and to influence in the right way.
Brilliant. So how challenging is it then to get a NED role without that sort of governance experience within your current executive role?
I think it really, really depends on what you're doing. Many roles will be advertised, and you'll know this, Joanna, and they'll often sometimes ask for specific skills to join a board. And sometimes that's probably the best route in if you don't have governance experience. It's actually, these are the skills they bring in. It might be I'm a chartered accountant, we're looking for someone on the audit and risk committee, or my background often might be a people committee or nominations committee, and I have experience with HR and change and recruitment and those kinds of processes. So taking that kind of skills route sometimes is helpful, because what you're able to demonstrate is that one, you've got the specific skills they're looking for, which helps you get to that interview, and then it's in your interview stage you're really able to articulate, you understand the difference between a NED role and an exec role. Most people don't have concerns around appointing someone if it's their first NED role, it's their first time having governance. Governance is stuff we can teach you. There's many things you can read, we'll give you an introduction, you can read on the Charity Commission, if it's not for profit, or you can read in the regulator, if it was the FCA, for example. But those things that are teachable. What isn't teachable, what is harder to teach, is having the right motivations to join the organisation, to support them, and understanding what it means to be that critical friend.
So this is great. So it's not a reason then not to apply because you haven't got that governance experience. Perfect. So I'm really keen to touch on age diversity, as I know that personally you're in your 30s, and there's often this myth, isn't there, around non-exec roles, that they actually go to people in the latter part of their careers, and so therefore they're probably of a certain age. If I think about you, your first board role was at the age of 13. So if you reflect on your time of being the youngest, often in that boardroom, how did you actually gain that credibility from your board peers?
I think, it's difficult at times, and I suppose that's probably what I say. And I think being so young. We started out as one of the different community groups, independent advisory groups that the Metropolitan Police had on specific issues. The group I was on specifically focused on youth and youth strategy across London and how the police engage with young people. And so that made it a little bit easier that most of the people we were engaging with really wanted to understand our perspective as younger people. As I got older, that starts to shift. And I think in particular, even in that role where I was there for 6 years, what really became evident is that at times your role is not just to agree. It is not to agree, it's not to rubber stamp things that people put in front of you. And you have to therefore be assured in yourself that you are making decisions or commenting or providing input on something for all the right reasons. And there were times when things came across us and I said, I don't agree with this, I can't support this, and for whatever reason. And that had a ramification on the organizations and what they were doing in their strategy going forward. Those moments are difficult, but what they teach you is how to do that well and how to do it in a professional manner. And now all of us watching who are in work or have worked before have had those situations where you've had to stand up for a decision or push back on something you don't quite agree with, and it's the same kind of skills. And that partly helps to build your credibility, because the worst thing you could do is go, well, I'm going to go sit in the corner or sulk about it or kind of talk to people behind after the meeting and talk behind people's back about it. Actually, if you can address it head on, you start to build that credibility. And then I think over time, if you're in a specialist role or you're appointed for your specialist skills, I should say, people come to rely on you and know you for the expertise you bring. So in that first role, potentially, it's that you are that accountant or you've got the people experience or you've got the digital experience, for example, and people know you from that. And that gives you a base of knowledge which to draw on. But remember, the boards are made up of a number of different people and they're diverse for a reason in terms of experience. They want people from different backgrounds or different experiences to all contribute in different ways. And collectively, you're making decisions. It's not just you, it's the collective.
I really like what you've said, because you're basically saying stand up for your beliefs and be yourself. That's why Absolutely. They nominated you in the first place and wanted you to join it. So don't fall into that trap of just becoming, I suppose, the nodding dog of the group. So 100%. I really love what you've said there. The reality of being a NED alongside your sort of day job as an exec can be quite time consuming. So what sort of top tips can you give us or our members today around how to balance that?
Yeah, I think when going for that first role, it's really important to remember, some people describe it as like a free MBA. You're going to learn a huge amount about an organization at a very, very senior level, at the most senior level, where it's all the strategy is set, whether that organization is a private for-profit company or it's a not-for-profit or it's a public sector board. You are operating at its highest level when you're seeing right across the whole organization, their finances, their people issues, digital issues, whatever they might be. And that's something sometimes your employer or your manager doesn't quite realize, is the breadth of exposure you're getting is training for free. But they don't have to pay for. The only thing they have to give you is time. And time they have. They can give you a time away from this and that. And so I often encourage people to have a very honest and open conversation up front. Sometimes when you get through the interview process, what they like about it is the fact that you have this non-exec experience. And if you don't have it, what your manager will look for is how does it help you in your day job? And you can make that argument that actually, because you're gaining these skills, you're understanding businesses in different ways, you're also giving back if it's a charity in that sense, you're broadening your skills and you can bring that into your day job to be better, to be an even more effective executive. And I think that's often the part you miss. So have that open conversation up front when you're applying for roles, when you've kind of got in. Often people want to talk to you about what the NED stuff is because it'll be interesting. Many people don't do it. And then if you're in a role already and you're going for a first NED role, just have that open conversation, get it as part of your development plan, talk to your manager about why you want to do it. So it becomes just part and parcel of what you do in your day job and it's supported by your organisation.
Yeah, beautifully put, and thank you for that. So you've touched on private sector and sort of that not-for-profit piece. Honestly, what are the key sort of differences between a NED role in the private sector versus not-for-profit? And most of our members are coming from that private sector. So I'm hearing through the grapevine that often they're saying, just when they're seeking that first NED role, they're more likely wanting to sort of stand and wait for their first sort of private sector opportunity. What's your thoughts about that? Is there really enough of a difference in the role on a day-to-day basis to really matter if it's private versus not-for-profit? And is it worth holding out, or are you better off just going for a not-for-profit opportunity?
I would say people shouldn't hold out. I'd say fundamentally you should apply for organizations where you feel really committed to what the organization is trying to achieve through their vision, their mission, their strategy. There is, of course, a difference. And that difference partly is around to regulations, around to legal requirements of you. If you're a trustee of a charity, the requirements in you, in my opinion, are actually more strict and more stringent than they are if you're in a private sector board. And again, they are different if you're in a public sector board. And it's being aware of what those requirements are. If in your day job you work in a regulated sector, finance could be a good example, legal is another example, then you are accustomed to being involved in a regulated environment and some of the requirements that are there. Just imagine you're at the most senior level of an organization, it's a charity, those requirements are still there to make sure the organization is well run, acting within its objects, so on and so forth. Private sector boards have a similar responsibility, but they are different because they are different in law. And that's where the different distinction comes from. If you're trying to build your career, maybe we talk about this as building a portfolio, I often say to people, work out where you can add the most, but also where you can gain some of that experience as well. And that isn't saying that charity boards are easy, in my opinion. I think actually many charity boards are more difficult because the pressures and expectations on you are very, very different. This is public money if you're a fundraising charity, it might be government money you're getting grants from, the expectations, everything on you is just that much higher. But you are therefore accountable not only to the people giving you money, but to your beneficiaries of the charity. But on a private board, you are responsible to your shareholders and to the wider organization as well. And therefore you have different pressures, different things you're responding to. So understanding you're there to make sure the organization survives, it is operating well, it is well managed, but there are different levers to pull. So I would really think most importantly about, does this organization's mission resonate with you? Can you see yourself giving them the time that it needs to do the work, to put the work in? Because whether it's private, not-for-profit or public sector, it is a lot of time to be on a non-executive board and to be a non-executive director. And that's the crucial thing, is can you give the time? You're more likely to do it if you're passionate about it.
Yeah. So, having a passion project and being involved in something that you're passionate about probably makes that time-consuming element a little bit more feasible to deal with, doesn't it? And enjoyable to deal with.
Yeah.
The future of boards is actually changing. We all know that and we can see that. But what do you feel they will look like in the future? And do you think AI will have a role to play?
I'll probably take the question in two parts, the AI and then the future of boards. I think the future of boards is changing. I think, boards are becoming more diverse. I think there is more conversations around age diversity on boards. There's more conversations still around gender diversity and racial diversity, disability as well, representation on boards. And I think that is a good thing. We're talking more about lived experience, learned experience, but also professional experience, and having boards that can represent those different aspects. As I said earlier, boards are a collective decision-making body. It's not about one person. So we need to be more diverse. That said, the requirements of boards to make that change are not necessarily there in legislation. And so part of that is around the different chairs, different organizations who are hoping to make those changes in their organizations. Some organizations are still very comfortable having no women on their board, for example. Whereas other people in other sectors and other organizations feel that is a thing they cannot do, and they cannot countenance based on what they're doing, their customers, their consumers, so on and so forth. So I think as they shift and change, it's going to require more people who are willing to put their hands up, willing to apply, willing to be on those boards to help bring about some of those changes. Now, I appreciate that is hard. Sometimes we're doing that in our day job. We feel that we are the only one who looks like us at our level in our organization, and that's challenging. And I think some of those same challenges exist in NED roles. But being at a more senior level, sometimes I think you can have a different impact on how the organization progresses and what it does with its strategy. Coming to the AI point, I think AI will change boards in so much as it is changing organizations. It will require them to respond differently to both the opportunities, but also the risk and the safety aspects of AI. We're seeing huge number of people use things like generative AI, like Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, for example. But at the same time, what are the privacy concerns for organizations if you have 1,000 members of staff putting proprietary information, knowledge into those systems? Where does it go? Where does it handle? So I think boards need to grapple with those things, but at the same time, the opportunity is there. So I've had board packs that are 400 pages. I've got 2 committees, and then I've got a board meeting that's 1,200 pages in a very short period of time to read. Now, could AI help me read that a bit faster? Yeah, it probably could. But then I'm inputting a lot of very sensitive information into that system. There are board portals that are coming out that are helping you do that. But at the same time, are they summarizing the right information? Am I missing what's really important for me to make the right decisions for the organization? And those are risks boards are going to have to grapple with. And I think we're going to see an increase in boards looking for digital technology skills on boards, that people have done transformation who understand AI to help them make some of those decisions.
Totally agree with you. And I think that you're right. It will help you, or it will assist you in sort of reading those board papers, or helping with that element of selection. But however, you will still need that human in the loop to make sure that it's a fair process. I think you're completely right. So,
because ultimately, as a board member, you are responsible for the decision of the organisation. Ultimately, personally, you are liable for the organisation in that sense as a director.
Yeah, thank you. So, my final question to you is, how should our members position themselves to be considered for those board positions? And what do they need to include on their CVs? So if you can give us some top tips on that, that would be great.
Perfect. There are probably two elements to applying for a role called. One is your cover letter. Almost every single board role I've applied for, I've seen that's out or we've done, requires people to either answer a couple of questions or to submit a cover letter. In the cover letter, it's really important to articulate why you're interested in the organisation. I've sifted many people out because it feels like they're applying to a million different board roles and aren't really passionate about what we're trying to achieve in this organisation or interested in helping us advance that. Two, it's what are the unique skills that you bring to the organisation and how are you therefore right at this moment to help us move forward. And I think if you can cover that in your cover letter well, that becomes really, really important. And again, if you're using generative AI, be careful. There are things that will catch you out in Gen AI. I have seen it myself and said, actually, I don't think you're editing this well, or you've just, it feels very, very generic. We want to get to know you, and we've got maybe 2 sides of A4 to do that. Your CV then should back up what you are saying in that cover letter or what you're saying in that cover statement. It should give us a clear sense of what are the roles you've had, probably exec if you haven't had your first non-exec role. And if you had 1 or 2 exec role or non-exec roles, let us know. Now, that's also important to consider what they might be. That could be on a board, but it could be chairing a board, a group, whatever it is, internally in your current day job. It could be work on a community project. It could be being a governor at a school. Those kind of things are important for us to see that you've got some sense of governance, even if it's not directly related to what we're doing. It gives us a better flavour. And then if you've got lots of experience, and you've got more board roles, how I structure my CV, the first 2 pages of my CV are all my kind of exec roles, my work, what I've done. Then the back page of my CV is just all the non-exec work I've done, and that's it. That's my professional CV. But I then have a separate non-exec CV, which is different, where I list out the non-exec work at the front, so that recruiters can see that first, and then at the back on the last page, just a summary of some of my most recent exec roles and a career history, just kind of bullet points, this job, date and title. And so I encourage you to think about what your exec CV looks like, but what your non-exec CV looks like and how that is different and what you want to put forward. Remember those key things around influencing, around delivering things with people, around working as a team. Those are skills we're looking for when we're looking for your CV.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So that is the end of the session for today. But I would like to thank again Ozzie for your time and giving us those snippets of information that will be really useful going forward. And thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.